it's the duty of Christians, and therefore Christian ministers, to stand in the corner of the vulnerable and the dispossessed. And I'm, for once, very relieved that the bishops have taken a robust and unified stance against it.
Do you think? Sorry to interrupt, George, but are you saying that the Rwanda migrants policy is un-Christian?
Well, I always hesitate to say something is un-Christian, because there are lots of things I disagree with my fellow Christians. And it's not for me to prescribe what is Christian and un-Christian, but I think I'd prefer to say that it's not a gospel I recognise. The gospel that I'm committed to, and many of my colleagues, is one in which we welcome the stranger, we look after the vulnerable and those who are most in need, and that includes migrants who are making this perilous and dangerous journey to our shores.
Which George?
Their applications for asylum ourselves.
But why can't the government is trying to stop those? That's what the Rwandan policy is about. It's to discourage these dangerous crossings, to send the message to the people smugglers that your business model is broken, that when people arrive on our beaches, they will not be welcomed into this country. They'll be sent to Rwanda. And if that message gets across, it will save lives. That's what this policy is about. And if I may say so, George, what I would say is that you're perfectly entitled to your opinions, your political opinions, and so are the bishops in the House of Lords, so is Justin Welby. But are you not imposing your political prejudices on the rest of us? You know, I think the flight should take off, and I don't think it is a religious issue whether or not it does.
Well, I think it is a religious issue, in as much as that we are commanded, if you like, invited in our Christian faith to defend the most vulnerable in the world and to look after them as best as we can.
But the government would say that they are being looked after, that this is in order to look after them, in order to protect their welfare and stop them getting into these dangerous dinghies.
Oh, sorry, I'm going off camera.
That's okay. Yeah, you're sort of moving around a lot there. Are you dancing, George?
I'm familiar with the arguments, Kevin.
Yeah.
But may I also say that I think that it's also enormously refreshing to hear the Prince of Wales speak out so robustly.
No, I think he's abusing his position. He's abusing his position. It isn't the role of the royal family to impose their political opinions on Her Majesty's subjects, just as I don't think it is the role of the Archbishop of Canterbury and the bishops, and indeed people like you, to impose your political opinions on your flock.
We're not imposing them. We're expressing them as robustly as you are, Kevin.
But George, when the Archbishop of Canterbury says something, quite rightly, members of the Church of England flock take it very seriously. He cannot say things lightly and just say, well, they don't have to agree with me. People will feel that they have to, and that is an imposition of a political prejudice.
Well, do you think that somebody feels imperiled to, having an opinion thrust upon them by the Prince of Wales? The Prince of Wales has called it appalling.
Yes, I know. And I think that what he said, by the way, don't forget he wasn't directly quoted as saying that, but he hasn't denied it. I think to let that be known that him, an unelected member of the royal family, thinks that a policy of our elected government is appalling is a disgraceful piece of behaviour by someone in a privileged position who lives in a palace.
Well, don't forget that not only is he going to become head of state, not too soon, we hope.
Yeah, well, the current head of state never issues her political opinion, so why is the heir to the throne?
No, but he's the Prince of Wales and he's entitled to express his opinion.
No, he's not. He's not.
He will also become...
He's not entitled to express his opinion.
Kevin, okay. If I may just express my view.
Sorry.
Yeah. He will become head of state, but as part of that role as our new monarch, he will be defender of the faith, and our faith is what we are. We're part of a Christian country that has 26 bishops in the House of Lords, all who have come out against this policy and expressed their opinion, and he's perfectly entitled to say, as a Christian country, we should behave in a way that is congruent with the gospel.
Well,
this is not a gospel I recognise.
I absolutely disagree with you. I don't think it is his role to do it, and I think it's an abuse of his royal position. And
you're entitled to your view, Kevin. I'm entitled to my view. And
of course you are, George. Of course you are, George. This is just a difference of opinion. Now, one thing I might say, we have to draw this lively discussion to a halt fairly soon. The Church of England used to be nicknamed the Tory Party at Prayer, so I might facetiously ask you when it became the Labour Party of at Prayer. But more importantly, do you think that the Church of England, in this stance that Justin Welby, yourself and the bishops, in their stance against the Rwanda policy, do you think you have the backing of the nation, the backing of the majority of people in this country? Because I don't think you do.
When I've expressed this view and I've looked at the threads on social media after the bishops have spoken out, I see probably something north of 2/3 of people agreeing with them on the threads underneath.
You should see my timeline.
100% right.
You should see my timeline.
That's because we live in a decent country that is still steeped in the Christian tradition, and most people, I believe, have a connection with that, even if it's only a folk memory, that we should be looking after and processing and seeing who needs to come to our country, rather than abrogating that responsibility and sending it off to Rwanda like they're commoditized human beings, which I think is disgraceful.
Well, and you're, as I'm stressing, you're absolutely entitled to believe that. So is Justin Welby. I'm just not quite comfortable with people in positions of power and influence abusing those situations by imposing their own views.
Well, why do you say it's abusing, Kevin? We're expressing our opinion.
You know, I had a lady calling me earlier, George, and she was a devout Church of England churchgoer, and she said that she's really upset because she feels that the Archbishop of Canterbury, Justin Welby, is calling her immoral because she thinks the Rwanda flight should take off.
Well, it's a lot better when bishops do speak out about what they believe and speak the gospel and preach. And that's why it's a nonsense to say that bishops should stay out of politics, because this is about people's lives. And the church has a responsibility to speak out about people's lives when they're oppressed, when they're mistreated, when they're maltreated. And this is an instance in which we think we see that.
Why do you all seem to be so left-wing, though? Sort of, you're like the religious wing of the Guardian.
Left-wing? What's left-wing?
It's left-wing to object to the Rwanda migrants policy.
Why? Because it's not Priti Patel and Boris Johnson's policy. We're speaking out as human beings, as followers of the living Christ in the world, as witnesses to the gospel, not because we love Conservatives less than we love Labour people or something. When we see wickedness, and I think this falls into that category, then we should speak out against it.